Mistress replaced pregnant wife with a lookalike billionaire, didn't notice until delivery day. He never suspected a thing. Alexander Davenport, a self-made millionaire with a magnetic charm and a relentless drive for success, believed he had everything he could possibly desire: wealth, prestige, and a loving pregnant wife, Cassandra. But behind the gates of their sprawling estate, a shocking game of deceit was underway. A cunning mistress, Veronica, had orchestrated the unthinkable, replacing Cassandra with a paid lookalike while the real wife was hidden away, desperately waiting to be rescued. For 9 nerve-wracking months, Alexander remained blind to the truth. Only on the delivery day did he finally realize the unimaginable. His beloved wife was missing, and the woman in the hospital bed was someone else. From the outside, looking in, one might have envied the life of Alexander Davenport. At just 38, he was a titan in the financial world. Born into a humble family in suburban Wisconsin, he'd clawed his way to the top of high finance in Chicago. Thanks to astute investments and a fiercely competitive nature, he amassed a vast fortune by his early 30s. People whispered about Alexander's lavish mansion in Lake Forest, complete with a pristine garden, tennis courts, and a wide marble driveway. They remarked on his generosity and his equally dazzling wife, Cassandra Davenport, a graceful woman whose smile lit up any room. But what the world saw was only the surface. Behind the shimmering facade of cocktail parties, philanthropic events, and sports cars, the couple wrestled with everyday issues like trust, jealousy, and misunderstandings. Cassandra often felt a distance creeping in, one she couldn't entirely attribute to her husband's obsessive work schedule. Alexander, for his part, tried to ensure his wife's comfort during her pregnancy, but he was pressured by deals, phone calls, and business trips. Both found themselves drifting through a haze of routine, desperately wanting to reconnect, but never quite making the time. A storm was brewing, one neither foresaw. And amidst this backdrop entered Veronica Price, a woman whose ambitions and manipulations were about to upend the Davenport household in a way no one could have imagined. Veronica Price had never been satisfied with an ordinary life. Raised in a modest neighborhood, she grew up watching the rich on television, devouring stories of glamorous parties and sumptuous vacations. She loathed her own small existence, the worn carpets of her mother's house, and the second-hand clothes she had to wear to school. Possessed of a sharp mind and a fierce will, she vowed to seize every opportunity she could to climb the social ladder. She caught her first break at 23, when she snagged a job as an events coordinator at an upscale hotel downtown. It was there she learned to charm executives and politicians, gleaning from them the secrets of confidence, networking, and influence. After a few short years, she moved on to handling private events for tech moguls and financiers. It was at one of these events that she set her sights on Alexander Davenport. At first, she approached him professionally, taking care to memorize his preferences, sparkling water over still, an affinity for a particular single malt scotch, a certain cologne he favored. She complimented him on his philanthropic endeavors, softly praising his success story. To Veronica, men like Alexander were trophies. But the more she observed him, the broad shoulders, the easy grin, the depth of his eyes, the more her interest shifted from pure ambition to something resembling obsession. She recognized a fissure in Alexander's life. While he was outwardly successful, he was starved for attention and affection. Cassandra was pregnant and dealing with her own vulnerabilities. Their dynamic was fragile, making Alexander susceptible to the cunning wiles of a woman who planned each move with meticulous care. It started innocently enough, or so Alexander liked to rationalize. After a charity gala he sponsored, Veronica lingered at his side, offering to handle some last-minute details about the event's finances. It was late, the city lights flickering through the expansive windows of the event hall. Alexander, slightly tipsy from champagne, found her conversation beguiling. Veronica laughed at his jokes, studied his face with enthralled eyes, and asked all the right questions about his success. When she pressed her business card into his hand, her fingers lingered against his skin. He felt a quick jolt of excitement. Weeks later, a professional meeting became an intimate dinner. Alexander initially struggled with guilt. He was, after all, married, and Cassandra was carrying his child. But the more time he spent with Veronica, the more he allowed himself to be lured by the attention and ease she offered. She gave him a respite from the demands of fatherhood, finances, and the emotional complexities at home. Veronica relished her victory. She believed she had finally won the heart and bank account of a man worthy of her aspirations. If that wasn't enough, she spent hours imagining a future by Alexander's side, conjuring ways to make it permanent. During one of their secret rendezvous in a penthouse suite, she dared to whisper that she could be a better partner than Cassandra, that she could give Alexander everything he wanted: passion, support, a glamorous social circle, and above all, children who could carry his legacy. Alexander brushed off these declarations with a rueful grin. "Let's not talk about that," he would say, though he couldn't deny the part of him that found the idea of Veronica's total devotion enticing. Each time the conversation took a more permanent turn, he felt a pang of guilt about his pregnant wife. Yet, the guilt was outweighed by his desire for Veronica's companionship. Cassandra wasn't naive. She sensed the shifts in Alexander's behavior. The late-night texts, the furtive phone calls he'd walk out of the room to answer, the hush in his tone whenever she approached. Pregnant and more emotionally sensitive than ever, she confronted him gently one night as he slipped into bed. The clock already close to midnight. "Is there something you want to tell me?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Alexander turned off the bedside lamp, slid under the covers, and kissed her forehead. "You're imagining things, Cass," he reassured her, feigning a confidence he didn't feel. "I'm just swamped at work. Big deals coming down the pipeline. You know how it is." Cassandra wanted to believe him, yet deep down, a gnawing sensation suggested that his explanation wasn't fully honest. Her mother, Ruth Sterling, who was in town for prenatal support, noticed the tension. Over cups of herbal tea, Cassandra confided her worries, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. Ruth rubbed her daughter's back, telling her to stay calm for the baby's sake. She advised Cassandra to talk openly with Alexander, but to also keep her eyes open. Without definitive proof of wrongdoing, Cassandra tried to maintain her composure. She convinced herself that perhaps Alexander was simply stressed. She began reading pregnancy books, preparing for the arrival of their baby with a mixture of excitement and fear. Little did she know that her pregnancy would become the very reason she'd soon be in mortal danger. As the affair grew more intense, Veronica understood that if she truly wanted to replace Cassandra, she'd need a plan that went beyond seduction. She needed to eliminate Cassandra from Alexander's life entirely, or at least long enough to steal her place. Through various social circles, Veronica had connections to disreputable individuals who specialized in odd jobs, making problems disappear without leaving a trace. Over discreet cocktails, she confided in one such figure, a man named Donovan Krieg, who had a history of helping the wealthy solve their complications. Most of these solutions hovered in a murky grey area between legality and outright crime. Donovan, intrigued by the potential payday from a mistress of a millionaire, listened carefully as Veronica spun her plan. Cassandra was pregnant. Veronica needed her gone, but not permanently, at least not at first. She wanted the child to be born healthy, or so she claimed. She intended to pass herself off as Cassandra for the crucial months leading up to delivery. By the time the baby arrived, Veronica hoped to be in a position to manipulate the birth certificate and effectively tie herself and Alexander together forever. The key challenge, ensuring that no one, especially Alexander, noticed the difference. For that, Veronica needed a lookalike who could convincingly pose as Cassandra in everyday life, especially from a distance, ensuring staff, friends, and casual acquaintances remained unaware. Meanwhile, the real Cassandra would be kept hidden away. Once the baby was born, Veronica planned to swoop in and claim it as her own. Donovan's eyes glittered with amusement. This was the kind of diabolical scheme he enjoyed orchestrating for the right price. "You're playing with fire," he cautioned, swirling his glass of whiskey. "If he notices, or if Cassandra escapes, you'll lose everything." Veronica's lips curled into a smirk. "I'm not going to lose," she replied, conviction ringing in her tone. Finding someone who resembled Cassandra closely enough to fool neighbors, staff, and doctors was no small feat. Veronica meticulously scoured social media, old modeling agencies, and casting call websites, hunting for a woman with the same build, complexion, and facial features. Eventually, she found a struggling actress named Brooke Sorensen. Brooke was 27, had once landed a bit part in a local play but never made it big. Her dreams of stardom had been replaced by waiting tables and late rent notices. When she received a cryptic phone call inviting her to a private audition, she was both skeptical and desperate. Veronica met Brooke at a discreet office space she'd rented. She assessed the woman's features. Light brown hair, brown eyes, soft facial structure close enough to Cassandra's if she wore the right makeup and styling. Veronica offered Brooke an outrageous sum of money, enough to cover her debts for years, if she agreed to sign a non-disclosure agreement and undertake the role of her life, impersonating a pregnant heiress. Brooke was stunned by the bizarre proposition, but her financial woes and her yearning for a big break overshadowed her moral compass. She told herself it was just a job, a role that would allow her to exercise her acting talents. She sealed her fate the moment she scrawled her signature on the dotted line and accepted the first payment from Veronica's purse. Over the next few weeks, Veronica and Donovan laid the groundwork for Cassandra's disappearance. They tracked Cassandra's routines, her obstetrician appointments, her yoga sessions, her shopping habits. They paid off a few people to keep tabs on the Davenport's driver, ensuring they knew exactly which days Cassandra traveled alone. One chilly Wednesday morning, near the 7th month of Cassandra's pregnancy, the trap was sprung. Cassandra, who had an OB/GYN appointment scheduled, decided to drive herself that day because her usual chauffeur had called in sick, a flu carefully orchestrated by Donovan. As she walked toward the clinic's doors, someone tapped her on the shoulder. She turned, only to sense a cloth pressed over her face, a strange chemical scent filling her nostrils. Darkness followed. Unconscious, Cassandra was spirited away in an unmarked van. The kidnappers drove her to an isolated cabin an hour outside the city, hidden among thick trees. By the time Cassandra awoke, she found herself in a sparse room with a locked door and boarded-up windows. A single lamp lit the corners of the space, giving it an eerie yellow glow. Every inch of her trembled with terror as she clutched her swelling belly. Veronica arrived shortly after to gloat. Dressed in designer jeans and a fitted blouse, she radiated a cold confidence. Standing at the doorway, she explained how everything would go. "You'll stay here, nice and healthy, until after the baby's born. If you try anything, I have no problem making your life more difficult." Her tone was icy but measured. "For now, you won't be harmed, but don't test me." Cassandra screamed, demanding to see Alexander, to be released, to know what this madwoman wanted. Veronica merely smiled, shutting the door behind her. The click of the lock echoed through Cassandra's mind like an ominous drumbeat. The morning after Cassandra's abduction, a black limousine pulled into the Davenport estate. Out stepped Brooke Sorensen, bearing a striking resemblance to Cassandra thanks to an expensive makeover and skillful hairstyling. She wore large sunglasses, claiming she had a headache and wanted to avoid bright light. The household staff observed her unusual quietness, but assumed it was moodiness from the pregnancy. Alexander was in his study, reviewing contracts, when Brooke timidly knocked on the door. He looked up, momentarily startled by a subtle difference in her posture or expression. "Cassandra?" he asked, furrowing his brow. "Yes, it's me," Brooke replied, her voice slightly huskier than Cassandra's. She coughed softly to cover her slip. "I'm not feeling well. The doctor said I should rest more." Alexander rose from his chair, concern etched on his face. He approached and kissed her cheek, noticing her perfume was different, a floral scent instead of Cassandra's usual vanilla fragrance. Brooke hurried to explain that the old perfume had been discontinued. Alexander shrugged, dismissing the oddities as small changes. Over the ensuing days, Brooke tried to avoid extended closeness or intimate moments with Alexander, fearing he'd notice the differences in her body and manner. She faked fatigue, headaches, and morning sickness. Alexander, juggling business problems, was largely focused on phone calls and contract negotiations, so he rationalized any discrepancies as part of the stress of pregnancy. His staff, respectful of Cassandra's privacy, kept their distance. Meanwhile, Veronica continued feeding Brooke instructions, reminding her of the fine details, the name of Cassandra's childhood best friend, the color of the nursery Cassandra had chosen, the baby names she'd considered. The more Brooke immersed herself in this charade, the deeper she fell into the twisted morality of their scheme. Trapped in the remote cabin, Cassandra counted the days in isolation. She was granted minimal food, enough vitamins to keep her pregnancy stable, and a crude bed to sleep on. Her captors, hired by Donovan, kept watch around the clock, rotating shifts to ensure she never escaped. Occasionally, Veronica would visit, her crisp heels echoing on the wooden floor. She'd observe Cassandra like a hawk, ensuring that the unborn child remained healthy. Cassandra tried everything she could to escape. She pretended to be ill, hoping her captors would lower their guard and rush her to a hospital. But Donovan's men were prepared, carrying a medical kit and following Veronica's instructions precisely. When her pleas for medical help were repeatedly denied, Cassandra realized she was dealing with professionals, callous individuals who had no compassion for her predicament. In her darkest moments, Cassandra worried for the life of her baby. She grew furious that Alexander hadn't seemed to notice her disappearance. Why wasn't he out searching for her? Did he believe Veronica's lies? The betrayal stung deeply, and yet, in her despair, Cassandra refused to surrender hope. She prayed someone would notice something off about the woman impersonating her. She prayed that she might find a way to escape before her due date. Each night, she whispered words of solace to her unborn child, vowing she would do everything in her power to protect them. As Cassandra neared her 8th month of pregnancy, Veronica felt the weight of her plan bearing down on her. Donovan ensured that all was running smoothly on the abduction front, while Brooke continued her masquerade at the Davenport mansion. Alexander, consumed by business, occasionally inquired why Cassandra was avoiding physical touch. The doctors said no intimacy for a while. Brooke would claim shying away. He accepted her explanation, though part of him missed the closeness they once shared. At the same time, rumors were swirling among the Davenport staff. Madison, the young maid, confided in the family chauffeur, Alonzo, that Cassandra seemed different. She complained that Miss S Davenport never remembered small details like which closet her robes were in or how she liked her coffee. Others noticed that Miss S. Davenport called them by the wrong names more than once, and she was strangely distant from her usual circle of friends. Just as these concerns started bubbling, Veronica swiftly intervened. She spread a story that the pregnancy was causing memory lapses and mild confusion. She pointed to medical pamphlets about pregnancy brain, telling the staff to be patient and supportive. Veronica's cunning manipulations calmed the staff's suspicions for the moment, but the cracks were there, hairline fractures in the carefully constructed facade. One afternoon, Alexander came across an old photo album. He was looking for pictures of Cassandra's college graduation to share at an upcoming baby shower. Flipping through the pages, he paused at a candid photo of Cassandra with her cousin, Lucy Donovan. The real Cassandra had a small birthmark behind her left ear, hardly visible, but memorable enough that Alexander had teased her about it once. That night, as Cassandra was resting in bed, Alexander found himself staring at her in the soft glow of the bedside lamp. He brushed a strand of hair away from her face, trying to see behind her ear. She stirred, opening her eyes. "What are you looking at?" Brooke asked, feigning a sleepy irritation. "Just you," Alexander said, forcing a casual chuckle. His heart pounded as he caught sight of unblemished skin. No birthmark. Could pregnancy cause changes like that? The question swirled in his mind, logically improbable, but he was hesitant to imagine the alternative. In a fleeting moment of clarity, a wave of doubt washed over him. Who was this woman sleeping beside him? Yet the thought seemed too insane to entertain. The next morning, Alexander forced the suspicion away. He told himself that stress could distort memories and details. After all, he had only glimpsed that birthmark a handful of times, right? Veronica sensed that Alexander's suspicions might be growing. She decided to accelerate her plans. She realized that once the baby was delivered, her leverage would be at its peak. She could present herself as the mother, potentially forging documents and forcing Alexander to choose between her and the real Cassandra, who would be out of the picture. As part of her plan, she suggested that Cassandra deliver the baby in a private, exclusive maternity clinic run by Dr. Linda Hathaway, a friend of Veronica's from her event planning circles. The clinic boasted VIP rooms and discreet confidentiality. Veronica pitched it to Alexander as a serene environment free from paparazzi and prying eyes. Considering his wealth and the constant possibility of media intrusion, Alexander agreed. Meanwhile, at the secret cabin, Cassandra was approaching her due date. Veronica hired a private obstetrician to monitor her condition in captivity. "If something goes wrong," Veronica hissed during one visit, "we'll transport you to a facility under the radar. But don't get your hopes up. You and that baby are mine one way or another." Cassandra, tears in her eyes, didn't respond. She prayed that if she went into labor, the chaotic circumstances might give her a slim chance at escaping. 2 weeks before the official due date, an incident raised alarms. Brooke fainted during breakfast, prompting Alexander to call for the family doctor, Dr. Thompson, a longtime friend. Dr. Thompson performed a quick exam and raised eyebrows at certain inconsistencies. Cassandra's belly shape and size seemed a bit off for someone so close to term, and her measured vitals didn't align with Cassandra's previous medical records. Brooke, panicking, faked a dizzy spell, insisting Dr. Thompson leave and that she wanted her own chosen physician's care at the private clinic. Veronica stepped in, deflecting Dr. Thompson's concerns with skillful excuses. "Every pregnancy is different. We want the best possible care. No offense to you, Doctor." Dr. Thompson left, unconvinced but unwilling to escalate matters without concrete proof. He reached out to Alexander, urging him to be vigilant. Alexander, stressed from negotiations for a multi-million-dollar merger, politely thanked the doctor and promised to look into it. Yet, with demands piling up on his desk, he couldn't focus on the possibility that something truly sinister was happening under his nose. Finally, the day came. A frantic call reached Alexander as he wrapped up a meeting with foreign investors. "Cassandra's going into labor." The voice was Brooke's, high-pitched and urgent. Alexander raced to the VIP maternity clinic, a modern building with tinted windows and heavy security. Veronica was already there, disguised as a concerned friend. Doctors bustled in and out of the delivery room, and Alexander was told to wait in a plush lounge. Time crawled. Each minute felt like an eternity. He paced the corridor, hands shaking. Guilt, excitement, and fear blended within him. Then a nurse emerged, beckoning him inside. On a hospital bed lay Brooke, her face slick with sweat. She'd done a theatrical performance, screaming and panting as though she was truly in the throes of labor. Alexander, standing at her side, gripped her hand. He observed the monitors. Something didn't feel right. There was a subtle tension in the medical staff's eyes, as if they were all in on a secret they couldn't share. Suddenly, Dr. Linda Hathaway paused. She looked at the readings on a fetal heart monitor, then exchanged a glance with the nurse. "We're not getting the right vitals," she murmured. Another staff member tried to discreetly adjust the machine. "What do you mean?" Alexander demanded, a surge of panic filling his chest. Before anyone could respond, the door burst open. In stumbled Dr. Thompson, who had followed an uneasy hunch all the way to this clinic. "Alexander, something's off," he started, but his voice trailed away at the sight of the woman on the bed. Then, like a masterfully timed thunderclap, chaos ensued. From the hallway echoed shrieks. A nurse ran in, shouting, "We've got a woman in the lobby. She's heavily pregnant and bleeding." Veronica's face went ashen. "No, that can't be," she hissed under her breath. The woman in the lobby was Cassandra. Gaunt, exhausted, but fueled by desperation, she had seized an opportunity to escape when one of Donovan's men had grown careless. She had fought her way out of the cabin, hitching a ride with a horrified truck driver who brought her straight to the nearest medical facility. She could name the same private clinic Veronica had arranged for Brooke. Upon her arrival, Cassandra's water broke from the stress of the ordeal, and a cascade of excruciating contractions racked her body. Nurses rushed to assist her, appalled at her ragged appearance. Security guards scrambled to block her entry, perhaps under Donovan's instructions, but they were too late. Dr. Thompson, who had come to investigate, recognized Cassandra instantly. Within seconds, the truth was laid bare. Alexander, racing into the lobby at the commotion, stood stunned as his real wife cried out in pain, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Alexander, I'm here," she gasped, clutching her stomach. Eyes wide, he gaped from Cassandra to Brooke in disbelief. The woman on the bed, the imposter with a strapped-on prosthetic belly under the sheets, realized her performance was finished. The entire room seemed to freeze, suspended in a single horrifying moment. The aftermath was immediate. Donovan's men, seeing that their secret was blown, attempted to flee, but hospital security apprehended them. Veronica, in a blind panic, tried to slip out of the clinic unnoticed. She made it as far as the parking lot before Dr. Thompson alerted the authorities, who arrested her on charges of kidnapping, fraud, and conspiracy to commit heinous acts. Meanwhile, Brooke yanked off the padded contraption that had passed as her pregnant belly, her face streaked with sweat and despair. She stammered apologies, insisting she never intended for anyone to be harmed. She only wanted the money. Though her tearful pleas might have garnered sympathy under different circumstances, the severity of her involvement left her with few friends. Alexander, still in shock, rushed to Cassandra's side. The staff wheeled her into an actual delivery suite, where her labor progressed rapidly. In a surreal twist of fate, Alexander found himself holding Cassandra's hand as she brought their child into the world less than 100 feet from where an elaborate ruse had nearly destroyed their lives. The labor was harrowing. Cassandra's body was weakened from captivity and stress. Doctors battled to stabilize her vitals. For several nerve-wracking hours, Alexander feared for both his wife's and his child's lives. But finally, in a swirl of bright lights and encouraging shouts from the medical team, Cassandra gave birth to a healthy baby girl. The baby's first cries shattered the tension in the room, triggering a wave of overwhelming relief. Cassandra sobbed as Alexander cradled their daughter, tears mixing with sweat on his face. He pressed his lips to Cassandra's forehead, whispering his remorse, promising to make things right. In the hallway, detectives swarmed, taking statements. Veronica, handcuffed and furious, glared at the closed door behind which Cassandra and Alexander were sharing their first precious moments with their newborn. All the cunning and manipulation that Veronica had employed for months had led to this humiliating defeat. Meanwhile, Brooke was escorted away by officers, looking as if her world had crumbled to ash. Days later, Cassandra recuperated in a guarded hospital room. Alexander stayed by her side, his phone silent, ignoring business deals and social obligations. He realized how close he'd come to losing everything that mattered. Guilt weighed on him, a constant reminder of his own failings, his affair with Veronica, his inattentiveness toward Cassandra, and his blindness to the mounting clues. Cassandra, too, was wrestling with a complex storm of emotions. Love for her newborn daughter, relief at having survived, but also a profound sense of betrayal. She confronted Alexander when they finally had a quiet moment alone. "I need the truth," she whispered, her voice tremulous. "How did it go so far that I was replaced, kidnapped, and you didn't notice?" Alexander, tears brimming, confessed everything: his initial attraction to Veronica, the flirtation that became an affair, the illusions he clung to that it was only a distraction and nothing more. He insisted he'd had no knowledge of Veronica's plan or any intention to let her harm Cassandra. "I was a fool," he murmured, clasping Cassandra's hand. "I let vanity and greed cloud my judgment, and I nearly lost our family because of it." For a moment, Cassandra's tears matched his. The pain was too raw, the wound too fresh. But then she saw their infant daughter sleeping peacefully in a bassinet nearby. She felt a powerful surge of maternal love, realizing that the child deserved a chance at a united family. "We can't just pretend this never happened," she said, voice wavering. "But for the sake of our baby, I'll try to heal. It'll take time, Alexander. You have to earn back my trust." Alexander nodded solemnly, as if bowing to the gravity of her words. The legal repercussions of Veronica's plot rippled outward. Several individuals from Veronica's network, including Donovan, Brooke, and even Dr. Linda Hathaway, were charged. Investigations uncovered that Hathaway had been part of forging medical records to hide the real Cassandra's absence. Veronica herself faced severe charges: kidnapping, conspiracy, fraud, and more. During her trial, she tried to claim she was manipulated by Donovan, framing herself as just another victim who'd fallen in love with a powerful man's promises. But the overwhelming evidence, including testimonies from Brooke and recordings discovered in Donovan's possessions, painted a vivid picture of Veronica as the scheme's mastermind. The real shock came when the FBI discovered Veronica had previously been involved in extortion cases against wealthy men, though never to this extreme. She had a pattern of infiltration, seduction, and blackmail, a pattern that now would earn her a lengthy prison sentence. The media descended like vultures the moment word leaked about the pregnant heiress swap. Tabloids splashed lurid headlines across their front pages: "Millionaire's wife replaced by Mistress," "Kidnapping scandal rocks Davenport empire," Shocking imposter pregnancy. Paparazzi camped outside the hospital and the Davenport estate. News anchors debated how Alexander could have been deceived for so long. Talk show hosts interviewed body language experts who dissected footage from charity galas, pointing out suspicious interactions. Alexander's business associates were rattled, fearing the scandal might tarnish the Davenport brand. Yet, ironically, some marveled at his devotion to Cassandra once the truth emerged, spinning it into a story of redemption. The Davenport name, which had once symbolized wealth and philanthropy, now became synonymous with a sensational tale of betrayal, cunning, and ultimate salvation. Cassandra struggled with the public nature of her trauma. She despised the swarm of reporters who tried to snap pictures of her and her newborn. She loathed the sensational coverage that trivialized the torment she had endured. But in the quiet moments she clung to her baby and took solace in the unwavering support of her mother, Ruth, who protected the family fiercely. As the weeks turned into months, Alexander and Cassandra navigated a complicated path of reconciliation. Marriage counseling sessions were arranged with Dr. Harriet Winslow, a therapist specializing in high-profile couples. At first, Cassandra couldn't look at Alexander without feeling a mix of resentment and sorrow. He, in turn, was consumed by remorse, willing to do anything to make amends. Dr. Winslow encouraged them to express their unfiltered feelings. In these sessions, Cassandra wept, recalling the terror of captivity, the ache of believing Alexander had abandoned her. Alexander admitted to his insecurities, how success had become his identity, overshadowing his marriage, and how easy it was for him to be seduced by Veronica's attention. The presence of their newborn daughter, whom they named Amelia, was a beacon of hope. Cassandra sometimes saw in Alexander's eyes a deep longing to be a better man for the tiny life they had brought into the world. Gradually, they established a shaky but growing foundation of honesty. Outside the therapy room, Alexander took steps to atone. He cut ties with business partners who reminded him of his reckless lifestyle, shifted his company's operations to allow more family time, and showered Cassandra with genuine gestures of love and support, though he knew trust wasn't something that could be bought with expensive gifts. He understood it would be built slowly, day by day. In a twist that surprised everyone, Brooke expressed deep remorse. From her prison cell, awaiting trial for her involvement, she wrote a letter to Cassandra. In it, she admitted that at first she was blinded by money, believing no real harm would come to the pregnant heiress. "I see now how foolish I was," Brooke wrote. "I let Veronica feed me lies about how this was all just a complicated ruse that would end harmlessly. I didn't grasp how you'd be terrified, locked away, or that a real baby was at stake. I'm so sorry." Cassandra debated whether to read the entire letter. Ultimately, she did. The sincerity in Brooke's words touched her, though she couldn't simply forgive the trauma inflicted. Yet, she found it in her heart to suggest a lighter sentence for Brooke when detectives interviewed her as part of the ongoing investigation, noting that Brooke was more of a pawn than an instigator. Brooke's letter became a small step in Cassandra's healing process. It underscored how far-reaching the manipulation had been, and how even someone with a shred of conscience eventually realized the depth of the crime. The trial of Veronica Price became a media spectacle. Prosecutor Sharon Delgado built a damning case, highlighting the systematic planning that went into the kidnapping and impersonation. Video evidence, secret recordings, and testimonies from Donovan's associates left little room for doubt. Veronica's defense attorney, Maxwell Thorne, attempted to portray her as a desperate woman in love, exploited by criminals more dangerous than she. But the cross-examination revealed Veronica's cunning nature. Emails showed her giving detailed instructions to Donovan about how to handle Cassandra, ensuring she remained unharmed but isolated. Text messages to Brooke indicated she was orchestrating every aspect of the impersonation. including how to mimic Cassandra's mannerisms, voice, and even signature. Eventually, the jury returned a guilty verdict on multiple counts: kidnapping, fraud, conspiracy, and attempted extortion. Veronica sat stone-faced as the judge sentenced her to a lengthy prison term. Her once perfect makeup and stylish clothes gave way to the stark reality of orange jumpsuits and barred windows. With Veronica's fate sealed and the sensational headlines finally beginning to wane, Alexander and Cassandra attempted to rebuild a sense of normalcy for their daughter. They retreated to a quieter life at a smaller property in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, hoping to escape the paparazzi presence in Lake Forest. There, they focused on therapy, each other, and baby Amelia's well-being. Although Alexander was able to preserve much of his business empire, he developed a newfound perspective. No longer obsessed with expansion, he restructured his companies to allow employees better work-life balance, implementing new health and family programs. Some called it his atonement project, but for Alexander, it was a sincere shift in values. He recognized that he had nearly lost his family, and no business triumph could ever match the gift of family. Cassandra, meanwhile, found solace in painting. She threw herself into art therapy, channeling her trauma and gratitude into vivid pieces that combined dark, swirling shapes with bright bursts of color. Friends and supporters praised her for her resilience, though the specter of her captivity still haunted her dreams. Months after the scandal broke, a charity gala approached, one that Alexander's company traditionally sponsored. Initially, Cassandra hesitated, not wanting to face the public, but she realized it might be an opportunity to reclaim her place in society on her own terms. On the night of the gala, the couple arrived hand in hand, ignoring the throng of photographers. Dressed in an elegant, flowing gown, Cassandra exuded both vulnerability and strength. Alexander, in a classic black tux, stood by her side, quietly humbled. When they took the stage to speak about the charity's cause, child welfare and maternal health, Cassandra recounted, in gentle but moving words, the importance of safeguarding women and children from all forms of harm. Without divulging explicit details, she alluded to her own harrowing experience, highlighting the resilience of mothers. The crowd, which had expected a polite speech, erupted in applause for her courage. Later that evening, as they danced under twinkling lights, Cassandra rested her head on Alexander's shoulder. There was a lingering hurt between them, but also a renewed sense of unity. Both understood that real healing would take time, yet they felt an unspoken bond, forging anew a vow to protect each other and Amelia from life's darker corners. Over the following year, Cassandra and Alexander navigated the complexities of balancing therapy with daily life. Flashbacks to her abduction haunted Cassandra, especially whenever she felt confined in small spaces. She worked with Dr. Winslow to cope, employing breathing techniques and mindfulness exercises. Alexander threw himself into fatherhood, waking up for late-night feedings, changing diapers, and relishing every laugh Amelia made. In many ways, he was more present than he had ever been. He learned to appreciate the small moments: a morning giggle, a messy mealtime, an afternoon nap on his chest. These were gifts he once took for granted. The scandal's ripple effects still popped up occasionally, from a malicious tabloid piece to sly comments at board meetings. But each time, Alexander stood firm. He refused to let the ghosts of the past overshadow the life he was working to build with Cassandra and Amelia. One quiet Saturday afternoon, Cassandra received a letter from the Women's Correctional Facility. Inside, she found a handwritten note from Veronica Price. The message was surprisingly brief. "I know you'll never forgive me. I don't ask for it. I only wanted to say I failed to destroy you, and for that, I'm oddly relieved. Take care of that little girl." Cassandra's hand shook as she read it. She felt a swirl of hatred, pity, and confusion. She tore up the letter, letting the pieces flutter into a trash bin. Later, she confessed to Alexander that it scared her. Veronica's words felt like a lingering shadow. Alexander held her, reassuring her that Veronica was behind bars, unable to cause further harm. In her own way, Cassandra decided to see the note as the final link to that dark period of her life. By discarding it, she was releasing the hold Veronica had once had over her mind. With time, Cassandra regained some independence. She took Amelia to Mommy and Me classes, reconnected with friends she distanced herself from, and even scheduled brunches with family. Her mother, Ruth, stayed for extended visits, doting on her granddaughter and offering Cassandra a comforting presence. Alexander remained at her side, fielding business calls between baby giggles, and each night they read bedtime stories to Amelia, sometimes pausing to lock eyes in gratitude that they were all together. The mansion in Lake Geneva gradually filled with laughter and warmth, the opposite of the stifling emptiness that once pervaded their Lake Forest estate. Strangely enough, in the wake of the scandal, the Davenports attracted a sympathetic following. Online, people commented on Cassandra's bravery. Others criticized Alexander, but some praised his efforts at redemption, asserting that while his mistake was colossal, his commitment to repair the damage was genuine. Cassandra considered starting a foundation to help pregnant women who found themselves in dangerous domestic situations. She consulted with lawyers and philanthropic advisors, exploring how best to leverage the attention her story had received for a greater good. The idea brought her a sense of purpose, turning her trauma into a catalyst for positive change. As Amelia took her first steps, stumbling across the living room floor, Cassandra snapped a picture that captured the toddler's glee and Alexander's encouraging grin. In that moment, Cassandra realized how far they'd come from the nightmare that began when she was kidnapped outside her doctor's office. She realized that tragedy had tested their bond to its core, and somehow they'd emerged on the other side, scarred but not broken. She wrapped her arms around Alexander's waist, resting her chin on his shoulder as they watched Amelia wobble toward a plush toy. Alexander kissed the top of her head. For now, it was enough just to be present, to be a family, forging a life defined by resilience, forgiveness, and love. On Cassandra's birthday, Alexander gave her a journal embossed with her initials. Inside, on the first page, he wrote, "For every day you felt alone, for every day our trust was broken, I will spend a lifetime repairing the walls of our love." She ran her fingers over the words, her heart swelling with conflicting emotions, pain for the memories that threatened to resurface, but tenderness for the man who was trying, day by day, to become someone worthy of her forgiveness. That night, as they sat on the porch overlooking the lake, she opened the journal and penned her first entry. Rather than dwell on the horrors of the past, she wrote about hope for the future, about creating a family life that Amelia could be proud of. A year to the day after her escape, Cassandra visited the clinic where Amelia had been born. She met with a handful of nurses who had aided her during those frantic hours. They embraced her, remembering how they'd marveled at her courage. This symbolic act of returning to the place where her life had nearly ended and simultaneously been renewed gave Cassandra a sense of closure. She strolled through the corridors, reflecting on the abrupt revelation that had toppled Veronica's charade. In a small gesture of gratitude, she donated funds to the clinic, earmarked for improving security measures so no one else could replicate the deception that nearly cost her everything. Despite the progress, Alexander's shame remained. He had nightmares of Veronica cornering Cassandra or of waking to find the real Cassandra gone for good. During a therapy session, he broke down, admitting that he felt unworthy of Cassandra's forgiveness. Dr. Winslow guided him through exercises to confront his guilt head-on. She reminded him that punishing himself forever wouldn't help Cassandra heal. It would only keep both of them rooted in the past. The best apology was changed behavior, and his ongoing devotion to Cassandra and Amelia was a testament to that commitment. By Amelia's second birthday, the family had moved back to a renovated portion of their Lake Forest property. The old mansion carried too many painful memories, so they sold it and built a more modest, though still luxurious, home on the far side of the estate. The staff who stayed with them were those who'd proven loyal and caring through the ordeal. Madison the maid, Alonzo the chauffeur, and a handful of others formed a close-knit household. They shielded the family from media intrusion, ensuring the Davenports could focus on building a happy life. On weekends, Alexander pushed Amelia's stroller through the local park. Neighbors began seeing the Davenports not as the wealthy couple from the tabloids, but as an ordinary family sharing playground laughs. Cassandra joined mommy groups, chatting with other moms about toddler tantrums and healthy snack recipes. She found a community of supportive women who respected her journey, seeing beyond the sensational headlines. Occasionally, curious onlookers recognized her, but over time, the gasps and pointed fingers diminished. In their place, a sense of normalcy settled, like sun after a protracted storm. After months of planning, Cassandra officially launched the Cassandra Davenport Foundation, dedicated to supporting pregnant women in precarious circumstances. The foundation raised funds for shelters, crisis hotlines, and legal aid, ensuring expectant mothers had resources to escape abuse or exploitation. She hoped her own brush with terror could raise awareness. In interviews, she spoke eloquently of how easily someone could slip into a dangerous situation without realizing it. She avoided salacious details of her own kidnapping, focusing instead on the importance of vigilance, community support, and legal protection. Alexander lent financial backing to the foundation, but he let Cassandra take the lead, respecting her vision and independence. The foundation quickly earned acclaim, gathering endorsements from celebrities and philanthropic organizations alike. Some even praised Cassandra as a symbol of empowerment, someone who overcame a nightmare to advocate for others. Even with the foundation thriving and life regaining equilibrium, the family still carried emotional scars. Some nights, Cassandra would bolt upright, heart pounding from a nightmare of the cabin. In those moments, Alexander soothed her, holding her until her breathing steadied. They learned not to bury their pain. Instead, they used open communication, therapy, and mutual support to process it. Slowly, the raw edges of their trauma dulled, replaced by a sense of cautious optimism. As the weeks and months passed, Cassandra and Alexander rekindled their intimacy. They no longer saw each other merely as co-parents or survivors of a shared ordeal, but as two individuals who still had a spark of love. Dinner dates, weekend getaways, quiet walks by the lake, these acts of devotion and shared experience helped them reclaim a sense of romance. And in those tender moments, Cassandra allowed herself to believe that Alexander had truly learned from his mistakes. Trust, once broken, was being painstakingly rebuilt. Brooke Sorensen's trial ended with a sentence that included a reduced term thanks to her cooperation and her clear remorse. She was required to participate in mandatory counseling and was banned from contacting the Davenports. From inside prison, Brooke wrote a second letter to Cassandra, describing the therapy sessions that forced her to confront the harm she'd caused. "I don't expect forgiveness," she reiterated, "but I'm trying to change. I realize now how easily I was manipulated by Veronica's promises of money and success." Cassandra chose not to respond, wishing to sever any final ties to the ordeal. Yet, she felt a quiet sense of relief, knowing that at least one participant in her trauma was seeking redemption, however meager. Newspapers eventually shifted focus to newer scandals and fresh celebrity gossip. The Davenport kidnapping saga became old news, a reference point in sensational, true crime retrospectives. But for Cassandra and Alexander, the lessons endured every day. On the third anniversary of Amelia's birth, the family held a small celebration with close friends and a few philanthropic partners. They toasted not only to Amelia's bright future, but also to the journey that had led them there. Cassandra watched as Alexander gently lifted Amelia so she could blow out her birthday candles, the laughter of their guests filling the backyard. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the lawn, Cassandra found herself smiling at the life she now had. It was imperfect, shaped by tragedy, but also luminous with love. She reflected on how, in the face of unspeakable betrayal, they had carved out a second chance, an affirmation that even after the darkest storm, the sun can rise on a clearer day. What began as a twisted plot conceived by a cunning mistress determined to replace a pregnant wife ended in an astonishing testament to human resilience and the power of forgiveness. Alexander Davenport, once enthralled by wealth and vanity, had nearly lost the woman he loved and the child they'd conceived. Cassandra, thrust into a nightmare of kidnapping and impersonation, emerged with a newfound purpose to protect and empower other vulnerable mothers. Their story stands as a cautionary tale, reminding us how easily deception can gain a foothold when trust is eroded. But it also serves as a beacon of hope, proving that even when darkness seems insurmountable, courage, love, and unity can guide us back to the light. At the heart of it all rests an innocent child, Amelia, who will grow up unaware of the horrors that preceded her birth, but secure in the knowledge that her parents, who almost lost each other forever, fought to build a safe and loving environment. In the end, that is what truly matters. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster of deceit, suspense, and ultimate redemption. Alexander and Cassandra's story is a gripping reminder that trust can be fragile, yet love can endure when nurtured by honesty and understanding. From a shocking betrayal that led to a pregnant wife's abduction, all the way to a triumphant reunion and the birth of their precious child, every twist showed the depths of human cunning, but also the strength of faith, hope, and loyalty. If you found yourself gasping at each revelation and cheering for Cassandra's escape, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you riveting stories like this, full of drama, lessons, and heartfelt moments. Make sure you turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. We appreciate you being part of our storytelling community. Stay tuned for more captivating tales.